Is there any actual evidence of a religion calling itself Satanism before the Church of Satan? We'll look at one Satanist's undercover journey to find such evidence from the people who insist such evidence exists.
Well, it's not Satan worship, it's Satanism. It's embracing the life-enriching things which have traditionally been given the devil's name. Pride, lust, earthly success, rational self-interest, atheism, humor, nonconformity, science, a passion for living, being selective about whom we love. We don't see these as shameful sins, but empowering ideals. And we also recognize the psychological power and fun of symbolism and aesthetics, so we utilize Satan as mythology's most fitting mascot for what we're about.
Satansplain. Satanic Talk with Church of Satan Magister Bill M.
Magister Bill M. here with Satansplain. Recently, a few new essays were added to churchofsatan.com. Reverend Jared Mammon had a meticulous essay going through an entire interview somebody gave, an interview in which the so-called scholar spewed a lot of misconceptions about Satanism, and Jared addresses all of them. It's a long read, but well worth checking out. You can find that in the Great Minds section of churchofsatan.com. Another essay, however, is from Church of Satan Warlock William Tull, and it's titled The Absence of Evidence and the Evidence of Absence. In this essay, he shares some of the details of an experiment he tried, where he joined a bunch of so-called Satanism forums on the internet and in a sort of incognito way, asking for evidence to support this claim we all hear so often about Satanism supposedly existing as some kind of religion long before the Church of Satan came around. Well, here's the big spoiler. He did not get any such evidence. But regardless, I found his whole approach and his findings very interesting and well worth the read. So I reached out to Warlock William and asked him if I could please read it and comment on it here on Satansplain, and he said yes. He was more than happy to let me, so thank you again, Warlock William. If you'd like to support some of his work, such as his horror anthology, Cannibalia, A Feast of Horror and Suspense, you should find some relevant links in the description of this Satansplain episode. And with that, let us begin the essay. The Absence of Evidence and the Evidence of Absence by Warlock William Tull. To be a Satanist in the age of the internet is truly a many-splendored thing. I am not of the old guard whereby most correspondence was held through physical letters and face-to-face conversations. I was not present for the rise and ultimate abolishment of the ill-fated grotto system. I was never able to see the notorious Black House in person. The modern ability to exchange ideas, share pet projects, or pets in general, and interface with those of our kind via social media has never been easier. To be able to interact and interface with those who were there from inception and hear their stories, see their pictures, learn from them in real time regardless of physical geography has been life-changing. I mean it with all sincerity when I say there has never been a better time to learn about Satanism both in history and practice. However, for all its glory and for all the good the internet itself has done for the world, the ability to share information at such a rapid pace on such an open set of platforms has become the most savage of double-edged swords. For every kilobyte of information shared, there are thousands of megabytes of misinformation that seek to drown it. For every year the Church of Satan endures, dozens, if not hundreds, of flash-in-the-pan, quote-unquote satanic temples, synagogues, mosques, and so-called true churches spring up online and across social media. Anton LaVey predicted their frequency would increase over the years, though I don't think even he could have foreseen the rampant and virulent plague of pseudo-Satanists in the 21st century. Among these vapid self-flagellating occultists, there exists a common thread in their attempts to discredit the Church of Satan, its founder, and the current administration. And that common thread, more specifically, is the claim that the religion of Satanism existed before 1966. To these people, Satanism is a religion as old as Christianity, older in some cases. Some would tell you that Satanism is the original Hebrew religion. Others make claims like Jesus was actually Lucifer, the Knights of Columbus were Satanists who formed the Illuminati to control the world, the founders of the Abrahamic religions were all originally Satanists. The list goes on, and gets more and more ridiculous. The exact pinpoint inception of this misconception varies, but the common thread remains the same: the claim that the religion of Satanism predates the Church of Satan. Popular forums like Reddit or Tumblr are filled with these wizened scholars who somehow know, beyond a shadow of the doubt, that Anton LaVey stole the term from ancient esoteric sources and subverted it. Why? Well, to con people and grift his way to fame. Satanic Facebook groups are stacked deep, sometimes with tens of thousands of members, most of whom profess to believe in some quote-unquote romantic Satanism or theistic Satanism, both of which claim to hold roots that reach back for centuries into history. Members of the Church of Satan do what they can to clear these misconceptions, and for some, it is practically a full-time endeavor. These stalwart individuals may wade into the cesspools of Reddit forums with pitchforks held aloft. They are responding to Instagram reels with helpful links and essays. They reply to Facebook comments with cited sources and ask the hard questions. It is a thankless role, one I salute and offer my sincerest gratitude. Though I have not spent the time on the front lines they have, I have observed for a long time, participated where it suited me, and I have noticed many common denominations in how these conversations often go. And here, Warlock William gives the basic example. The pseudo-Satanist says, LaVeyan Satanism is only one form of Satanism. True Satanism existed way before 1966. And a Church of Satan member responds, okay, prove it. To which the pseudo-Satanist says, OMG, bruh, you're all so quick to gatekeep. Do your own research like I did. Now, mind you, this is a very muted and scaled-down facsimile. However, it is not far from what you will encounter. The pseudo-Satanists are eager to make a claim, but when pressed, become defensive, adversarial, and dismissive. Even when engaged on a conversational level, or given the benefit of the doubt, they will offer a rebuttal that contains a lot of words, none of which involve cited credible sources. These conversations usually devolve into a digital mud wrestle with supporters of both sides jumping in until some level of administrator closes the whole thing down. And just to pause the essay here, sometimes, of course, an admin never actually shows up. I've been on many Satanism forums over the years that are usually formed by somebody who got kicked off of some other forum. And they say, well, I'm going to make a forum that doesn't have any kind of rules, because to be truly satanic, of course, is to have no rules. And then they'll set up a message board or Facebook group or whatever, which will be a complete shit show. In those cases, I think what happens is the Satanist realizes, okay, this thread is going nowhere, and eventually leaves out of boredom, stops replying, or just having much more important things to do. Of course, the idiot who then got the final word in somehow claims victory. Anyway, continuing with the essay. The pseudo-Satanist feels self-assured that their trolling achieved its desired effect and stuck it to the mean old Church of Satan gatekeepers. The Church of Satan member is reminded exactly why we do, in fact, gatekeep our religion. In very rare occasions, the pseudo-Satanist sees the error of his or her ways and either backs down, apologizes, and even in rarer occasions, does the research needed to understand why they were wrong. This is an outlier, however, as most of the time, nothing is accomplished. In my day-to-day life, I spend my time working in human resources. In the training classes I facilitate, one of the tools we promote is collaboration instead of conflict. If you approach someone as an enemy, even a perceived one, expect to be treated as an enemy. All people want to be given the benefit of the doubt, and no one wants to be put in a position where they might be told they are wrong or stupid, even if they are wrong or stupid. It was from this training that I formulated a plan. It was simple at inception. I would join as many of these pseudo-satanic groups as possible. I would send out a missive for assistance, and then see if I could charm my way to finding this alleged proof of a satanic religion before 1966. That was it. I wasn't going to argue or present well-established facts. I was not going to be an adversary. Rather, I was going to play the role of ally. I was going to play the role of the wandering scholar, someone well-read in the occult, well-versed, but naive. I was going to conduct this experiment with an open and curious mind, to test again my hypothesis that there is no credible evidence of a religion called Satanism before 1966 that exists either online or in printed form. I had to set a few barriers for myself to maintain some form of clinical and personal integrity. And here in the essay, Warlock William lists 4 guidelines for himself. 1, I would read anything that was presented to me, provided I had not already read it before. 2, I would engage willingly and eagerly in conversation with anyone who could guide me towards something tangible, regardless how I felt about him as a person or their views on Satanism. In short, I would suffer any fool. 3, I would engage in any ritual or initiation needed to gain access to a secret society, so long as it caused no harm to myself or anyone else. And 4, in that same vein, I would not engage in any illegal activity or be party to any such activity. Okay, so again, to recap, the plan that the author put out here was to start a Facebook group, be willing to read whatever was sent his way, talk to anybody who could guide him to the actual evidence, even if the person seemed like a nutcase. And if somebody claimed they needed to be part of some secret initiatory organization to obtain the secret information, then, okay, he would go ahead and do that, provided it didn't involve anything illegal or something self-harming. And through all of this, in an open and courteous manner, while playing dumb, hope to obtain evidence of an actual religion calling itself Satanism before the establishment of the Church of Satan in 1966. So continuing with the essay. With these parameters in place, I decided to start on one social media platform, Facebook, and for consideration of my own time and pursuits, opted to remain there unless directed to other websites or social media platforms. So it began. Satanism and occult-flavored groups are not hard to find. At first, I just started joining them without regard to what I might find within. I aimed for the largest groups with the most members. Many of them required some sort of entry questions to be answered and an administrator to approve my request. I was surprised how many did not have these things. Anyone could join and jump into the conversations immediately. It reminded me of the older days of the internet, where it was a lawless frontier, unmoderated and unfiltered. It became apparent many of these groups were spaces meant for anyone who had even a passing interest in the occult or left-hand path. Everything from traditional witchcraft and Wicca to Luciferians, devil worshippers of all shades and severity, Gnosticism, atheists who listen to heavy metal, Freemasons, I was just as surprised as you were, and Christians there to fight a good fight. After joining 25 separate groups, I realized that for my purposes, I had to pare my search down. I reviewed the contents and descriptions of each group and trimmed things back to groups that exclusively mentioned Satanism and emphasized places that were described as places to learn or worship. This left me in 13 active pseudo-satanic groups to begin casting my net. That net was a post I made and replicated throughout each of the groups. And just to pause reading, here in the article, the author gives an example of the post he made and would post with some modifications here and there, depending on the exact nature of the group. But roughly it went like this. Greetings, brothers and sisters in Satan. I am a practitioner of the dark arts and long adherent of the left-hand path. I bask in the light of Lucifer, bathe in the moon blood of Lilith, and sacrifice at the altar of Father Satan, with the word altar, of course, misspelled. I'm guessing intentionally. I love pure satanic black metal and Marilyn Manson. And then, of course, inserting a backslash, lowercase m slash, little emoji there for the horns up sign. Thank you for allowing me to join this group. I can tell I am among refined scholars and learned creatures of the night. I need your help. The only books I've found that define Satanism and an avenue of practice are those belonging to the Church of Satan canon. Can anyone point me to some bodies of work that discredit the idea that Anton LaVey created Satanism? I have access to a university library and own many books already, including the works of Crowley, Stanislaw Przybyszewski, Michael Rose, and many others. While these all hint at other more esoteric offerings, none of them truly define a practice of Satanism. What would shut these COS loudmouths up for good? Help me, brothers and sisters, and hail the Dark Lord Satan. Nima. And of course, Nima, signing that off is Amen backwards. So that was the basic post Warlock William made, incognito, and he goes on to describe what happened next. Just to summarize it, some groups he got no replies to that and no responses, and some others he got a decent number of views and likes. And when he did get comments, they included people who made a comment just to follow the thread and get notifications, or people showing their support to say, yeah, stick it to the Church of Satan, let's see this. But, as he points out, very few genuine or helpful responses to what he was asking for. So he just waited, and Warlock William puts in the disclaimer that the rest of what he describes here didn't necessarily happen in the order it's written here. The responses and the interactions happened in different spurts, overlapping with others at odd hours. Some responses, he says, were in real time. Some conversations were slow over the course of days. The Warlock describes it as, quote, akin to tracking a series of shotgun blasts all loosely fired in the same direction. So what he does here for the rest of the article is break things down, break the replies down into three categories. The experts, the sects, and the scum. And that's S-E-C-T-S, sects, as in denominations, not S-E-X, sects. So the experts, the sects, and the scum. Let's look at the first category of people who replied, the experts. The most direct and focused conversations often came from self-proclaimed experts on the subject. They derived their expertise from, other supposed experts on the subject. These individuals were clearly very passionate about the subject of Satanism. The grammar and literacy comprehension varied wildly from college level to kindergarten. The result was largely the same. Often these so-called experts would send messages and comments coming close to 400 words detailing their opinions, histories, and supposed research they have done on the subject. Dozens of books were recommended. And here Warlock William lists the 5 books most frequently referenced by these people. 1, The Lesser Key of Solomon. This is a 16th century work, though the Aleister Crowley transcription is most common. 2, Przybyszewski's book from 1897, The Synagogue of Satan. 3, Liber Azerate by Shaheen Koshnod from 1995. 4th book was The Devil's Party, Satanism in Modernity by Faxneld in 2012. By the way, that other essay I talked about on churchofsatan.com, written by Reverend Mammon, I mentioned he had debunked this interview, and yeah, it was an interview with that same author. And the 5th book most often referenced, Aleister Crowley's The Book of Law from 1909. Now, Warlock William goes on to say, there were many more books that were presented as the smoking gun I was looking for. Dozens, in fact. These 5 were the only ones mentioned more than once. And for sake of remaining succinct, they are the pieces that I have included here. Now, to pause the essay again here for a second, I think this seems like a reasonable approach. I mean, if we're to assume that there really was a definitive smoking gun that points to a religion calling itself Satanism before the Church of Satan, and you have all these so-called scholars who show up and agree, then 5 books that get recommended among multiple scholars who are passionate enough to answer this challenge, well, they must have something to them, right? They must have some substance, answer the call in some way. I suppose somebody might try to argue that there was some sixth or seventh book that could have been included but wasn't, though, again, if it's all that amazing on the topic, all that definitive, then it begs the question of why didn't it get multiple mentions? Well, let's just take a break right now. When we come back, we'll look at these 5 books on the list and see if they do have the evidence they purport to have. Spoiler, they don't. See you after the break.
You are listening to Satansplain, real satanic talk with Church of Satan Magister Bill M. For questions, comments, and correspondence, send an email to bill@satansplain.com.
The Neutral Wisdom Podcast is a podcast dedicated to passing on knowledge and wisdom from a satanic perspective. Hosted by Satanist Robert Shirley, author of Neutral Wisdom, Contemplations of a Satanic Warlock. Join us as we challenge conventional wisdom and offer refreshing insights for those seeking deeper understanding and self-empowerment through a modern philosophy. Embrace your own authenticity and transformative potential. Join us wherever you get your podcasts or at neutralwisdom.ca. Ever forward.
Handmade, all-natural, botanical perfumes, soaps, and ceremonial incense, sculptures and jewelry to adorn yourself and your other altars. All this and more await you at moonandsunemporium.com. Ritual perfumes and other occult fine art luxuries, created and curated by me, Priestess Sarah Josephine Clark, with tarot readings by Reverend Dr. Dylan Clark. moonandsunemporium.com.
Magister Bill M. here with Satansplain. Visit the main website for the show at satansplain.com. There you can find every Satansplain episode. You can also listen to Satansplain on Spotify, YouTube, Audible, and a host of other places. If you are on social media, please give Satansplain a like and a follow, whatever the equivalent is, on Facebook, X, and YouTube. Likewise, if you're listening now on YouTube, don't forget to hit that like button for this episode. For all questions and correspondence, you can email me directly. bill@satansplain.com is the email address. If you enjoy Satansplain and would like to support the show, please go to the show's page on Locals. Point your web browsers to satansplain.locals.com. You can sign up for Locals for free, but you can also additionally become a paid subscriber there. That is the best way you can support Satansplain. Though we also have a merch store, you can go to store.satansplain.com for that. But thank you as always to all of you who support the show in one way or another. Speaking of podcasts, a little while back I pushed out an episode of my other podcast, The Devil's Mischief, a little dedication I did to Tom Lehrer, but you can find that on radiofreesatan.com. Before the break, I was reading through the essay by Warlock William Tull. He was in the middle of this experiment and was asking for evidence of religion called Satanism before Anton LaVey. He was suggested a number of books in these groups that he visited incognito, but these particular 5 books were suggested more than once. The Lesser Key of Solomon, Przebylewski's book, The Synagogue of Satan, Liber Azerate, Faxnell's 2012 book, and finally Aleister Crowley's The Book of Law. Well, getting back to the essay, William starts with the second and fourth books in this list. He says, The Synagogue of Satan is the most cited source online, as well as the source most cited by Professor Perfaxneld himself in his own writings. While being originally published as a German language text, it was not translated and published in English until 2002, long after the founding of the Church of Satan. In this book, Stanislaw Przebylewski provides a compendium of medieval witchcraft, black magic, and other assorted occult practices. He is also often cited as the first author to refer to himself as a Satanist. Where this fails the criteria of my research is that while the term Satanism is used for these various occult practices, it is used in the same umbrella fashion that the Catholic Church uses the term. So its usage here is akin to terms like heathen or idolater or heretic. The use of Satanist in this context is synonymous with devil worshippers. who are thus still following the Catholic pantheon and simply rooting for the bad guy. In short, the book does not define a codified and practiced religion called Satanism. It is for this reason the works of Per Faxneld also fail to satisfy these criteria as well. While Faxneld's works are comprehensive, well-written, and his academic career receives a lot of lauding and accolades, none of his works point to any definitive proof of a religion called Satanism before 1966. The remaining 3 books from the list of 5 can also be dismissed. The Lesser Key of Solomon is a popular occult text that dates back to the 16th century. However, it makes no mention of Satanism as a religion or otherwise. Likewise, anything by Aleister Crowley is related to Thelema, and is, of course, not Satanism. And to pause reading the essay right here, you can look up the book that was suggested here, the Book of Law. I think it's in the public domain by now. In any case, you can digitally search the whole book. I did. And the words Satan and Satanism don't appear anywhere in it. The suffix ism doesn't even appear in it. So if Crowley's works don't mention Satanism and his followers, the Thelemites, don't consider him a Satanist or their religion to be Satanism, and Satanists don't consider Crowley to be Satanism, then why call Crowley a Satanist, much less claim that he founded a religion called Satanism before Anton LaVey? I don't know. It seems the only answer to that is because Christians call Crowley a Satanist, because they stupidly call all occultists Satanists. Anyway, moving on to the last book example. Liber Azerate is the foundational text for the Temple of Black Light, formerly the misanthropic Luciferian order. It references quote-unquote ancient practices of Satanism, but does not cite any sources, nor provide any further research avenues. It is worth noting that the founders of this order were violent extremists, whose roots tie to the Order of Nine Angles. For those unfamiliar, they are most assuredly not Satanists, nor representatives thereof. They also do not predate the Church of Satan. As a result, this information was initially disregarded. However, not for long. More on that later. When these so-called experts were pressed by my findings that I listed above, I got one of 2 different responses. Either complete silence, or a response along the lines of, well, the answers you seek won't be found in a book. So instead, I was urged to seek real-world Satanists, people whom these experts had themselves studied under in their formative years. I was curious where I might find these wizened gurus or how to contact them. I was told that, they don't communicate online. One individual even warned me, if they want to talk to you, they will find you. Oftentimes, these so-called experts would become dismissive when pressed, derisive when challenged, and eventually hostile. In short, they had nothing of substance to offer. And now let's move on to the next group of people. Those were the experts we talked about. Let's talk about the sects. As I continued to read through books and responded to the alleged experts in numerous comment threads, some of the more intriguing and potentially compelling conversations were happening through Facebook Messenger. In joining so many groups, I was both automatically enrolled and privately invited to join multiple group chats. It was in and among these chats that I felt that old Wild West days of the internet feeling once more. Some of these chats were wildly unimpressive. Basically, a repository for people to exchange obvious AI-generated sermons and images of demon girls with large breasts, people typing in "Hail Satan" unprompted, trying to get some sort of response or desperately make some sort of connection. Other chat rooms were core groups of friends, carrying on conversations while hundreds of other people lurked and contributed nothing. However, the majority of the activity in any of these group chats came from the people from Africa, desperately trying to sell their soul to join the Illuminati. This is nothing new at all, but these chats were absolutely dominated by pleas for money in exchange for souls, or worse, murder. Many of these desperate people stated they were willing to shed blood in the name of Satan. Largely, they were ignored or banned from the chat. And just to pause the essay again here, if you want to learn more about this phenomenon of people primarily from Nigeria who believe that satanic groups are synonymous with the Illuminati and will make anybody rich, well, you might want to check out the Satansplain episode I did on that, which is episode number 25. Overall, most of these group chats were unimpressive and proved useless to me in my search. Most, but not all. As I conversed and involved myself in a few of these group chats, I started to receive invitations to locked and private spaces, places with ominous-sounding names like the Grand Shrine of the Black Sun and Denizens of the Dying Serpent. It was in these private chat rooms where people felt truly empowered to share their theories and practice with me. Within these secret spaces, I noticed a fairly consistent hierarchy. Many of these group chats were treated as secret meeting and worship places, with the administrators and moderators acting as the spiritual leaders and religious figures. Anyone with the words administrator or moderator following their name was revered as an expert, and the power dynamic was based solely around them. These leaders often went by mysterious monikers: the Flaming Lady, Arquebus Prime, Magister Ram Daz, etc., etc. With no regularity or schedule, they would rotate through preaching, spouting cryptic affirmations, or sharing their ritual and practice. It was a seminary without structure nor substance. Many of these so-called sermons would be quite detailed, and I started to wonder where this information was pulled from. These groups treated themselves as different religious denominations or sects, and so I began to refer to them as such. After sifting through these sects or denominations, I found myself in 5 different ones that each seemed to have some deeper and more esoteric purpose. If I was going to find what I was looking for, it would be in these closed-door groups, steeped in ceremony and secret. I began to interact more regularly and began to ask my questions, specifically, where their ancient rites and rituals came from. I was regarded with a high degree of suspicion at first. Slowly, my scholarly naivety was rewarded. Within the hallowed halls, I began to build a reputation as someone knowledgeable, but seeking to know more. Several of these groups made it clear they only drip-feed the information I seek, unless I made a cash contribution to the clergy. That is always a clear indication of a scam, so I promptly exited. With my stable of groups dwindling, I began to give up on the whole endeavor, until I received a private message from someone who went by the name Lord Melech Ophis Shachor. He claimed to be a magister of the Temple of the Black Light and promised me all the information I sought. All I had to do was complete the initiation ritual. Before I undertook the ritual, I made my boundaries very clear. No animal sacrifice, no self-harm, no illegal activity, etc. Lord Shachor was very understanding and assured me nothing of the sort was required. So I agreed, and through a series of Facebook messages, I was instructed on how to conduct the ritual. The initiation ritual was fairly simple in and of itself. In fact, it was rather unremarkable, and a pale imitation of the greater magic rituals written by Anton LaVey. I played along, despite the absurdity of it all. Finally, I was granted access to the Sacred and Holy Archive, which was a private Facebook group. A Facebook group that contained illegally downloaded PDF files of dozens, possibly hundreds of occult books, including, of course, the Satanic Bible and the Satanic Rituals, despite the fact that the progenitors of these groups claimed to despise LaVey and also claimed to follow the practices that far outdated his teachings. Oh, the irony. And here in the article, we get to the third group of people. So we had the experts and the sects, and now we have the scum. Among these pseudo-Satanists and their private chats and secret underground sects, I tried my best to focus on the task that I had at hand. It was impossible to ignore the vile and disgusting human beings that these groups allow amid their ranks. When I say these groups and orders have no standards, I mean it. There were Order of Nine Angles psychopaths promoting violence and chaos for the sake of destabilizing civilization. I witnessed the incoherent ramblings of people who claim they speak to literal demons and were allowing them to use their bodies to type and interact with the group. These people showed obvious signs of mental illness. Instead of being encouraged to get professional help, their delusions were applauded and rewarded. The ranks and file of these groups are, at best, deluded sycophants starved for some sort of validation, and at worst, potential terrorists and actual pedophiles. I found one particular quote-unquote Satanism group chat where they explicitly said all were welcome, and among them were proud, self-proclaimed pedophiles seeking ways to groom and lure in young boys for sexual use. Screenshots were taken, and I took what information I could find and reported it to the authorities in their states and countries. The authorities took the claim very seriously. They received all the information and told me they would be following up on it. I can only take them at face value, but I am not a savvy enough of an internet sleuth to run it down further. The group was also reported to Facebook, and I publicly admonished the admins for allowing that absolute detritus in their midst without judgment. I was banned from the group and was glad to be gone. It was a sobering reminder of exactly why the Church of Satan is proud to gatekeep their ranks. Truer words were never spoken. And now we get to the end of the article. Here's the conclusion. Ultimately, I had ended up where I started. I started in Facebook groups and ended up in Facebook groups. I had spent all this time seeking, sifting, questioning, conversing, and reading with nothing to show for it. At no point was I ever any closer to finding anything concrete. And anything I was provided as hard evidence was the same old arguments and misconceptions I had at the beginning. Despite my approach as an ally, I obtained the same results as if I approached as an adversary. I understand that the scientific method is not intended to prove a negative or the absence of something. However, modus tollens is a valid form of deductive reasoning that allows us to conclude that if a conditional statement is true and its consequent is false, then its antecedent must also be false, regardless of evidence. So to pause here a second, this is a reference to the logical inference that if you're given the logical conditional, if A then B, and you're told B is false, then it follows A is false too. Or to put it another way, if you know if A then B, then it follows if not B, then not A. So for example, if I say, if I add a lot of sugar to my coffee, then it will taste sweet, we can use logic to extrapolate some other information. It doesn't necessarily follow that if my coffee is sweet, then I necessarily put sugar in it because, I may have put honey or stevia or something in it instead. You can, however, logically say that if my coffee is not sweet, then I did not put a lot of sugar in it. Otherwise, the original statement of if I add a lot of sugar to my coffee, then it will taste sweet, which we took as true, would be false. So you can listen to Satansplain episodes number 30 and 31 for more examples of logic and fallacies. But all this is a side point to get to the main point here, concluding the article. And that is, therefore, if written proof of a religion called Satanism before 1966 would debunk the claims of the Church of Satan, and the claims have not been debunked, thus I must conclude there is no written proof. And the author finishes with some pictures of evidence he gathered in his experience to bring the receipts. So you can see those if you look at the article on churchofsatan.com. And I'd actually like to offer a little variation of this conclusion in the essay. I'm tempted to go into a long explanation on the burden of proof and stuff like that. But again, I kind of covered all that in Satansplain episodes number 30 and 31. Not to mention the whole three-parter on debunking the notion of satanic denominations. Those were episodes 71, 72, and 73 of Satansplain. It's true that I can't prove a negative in cases like this. As your typically annoying armchair philosopher would say, atheist or Christian or otherwise, Bill, you can't prove with absolute certainty that no religion called Satanism existed before LaVey, because you haven't read every single piece of literature ever written by all humans, so you don't know. Okay, my answer to that is fine, but I don't have to. You see, I'm a Satanist, and I say that I am because I get that label from the Satanic Bible and related works of Anton LaVey and the Church of Satan, an organization of adherents of a religion called Satanism, who call themselves Satanists, and have been doing so for over half a century now. As with the name of every religion or ideology, I am not going to accept the idea that throwing the same label on something fundamentally different is okay. That's not how words work. Likewise, I reject this idea that Satanism can be anything you want it to be, because, as I always say, you need some way to distinguish Satanism from not Satanism. Otherwise, the term would be useless. So if you approach me and tell me that I'm somehow not a real Satanist, and or you yourself are a Satanist despite your religion bearing no resemblance really to mine, then you're the one making the claim and the burden of proof is on you. Where am I wrong? I dare you to tell me. I have seen no evidence of a religion calling itself Satanism before the Church of Satan, and I see no logical reason to take the label of this religion of mine, which, as far as I can tell, the Church of Satan established, and give you a free pass to throw the same label on belief systems or causes that are so fundamentally dissimilar that there is no logical reason at all to call it a denomination of the same religion as me. If you think otherwise, again, the burden of proof is on you. Give me a reason why I should call you a Satanist any more than I should call some random heavy metal fan in a Slayer shirt a Satanist, or call a Buddhist a Satanist, or why I should call some serial killer in the news a Satanist just because the news headline called him that. Or if you're one of these people who says I shouldn't care about any of this and that I should just let whatever people use Satanism to mean whatever they want, well, to that I say no. Fuck you. I'm a Satanist, and when you misrepresent Satanism as something that it's not, then you're misrepresenting me. So you see, I have a justified personal interest in correcting misinformation on my religion when I see it. Again, I've seen no evidence of religion calling itself Satanism before the Church of Satan, and it's a religion that we've articulated and put into practice now for a few generations. So as far as I'm concerned, we've got dibs on the name, Satanism. But of course, I'll run into people who say, oh no, there are other kinds of Satanism, like there's romantic Satanism, and no. Stop right there. Romantic Satanism is not a religion. It's just a label applied to the genre of Christian poetry, like Milton's Paradise Lost. John Milton did not establish, let alone practice, a religion calling itself Satanism. If you're going to stretch and water down the meaning of the label Satanism to try to fit everything from Paradise Lost to the Satanic Bible to Kevin Solling's made-up 7 tenets, then what does the word even mean anymore? At that point, you're no better than the paranoid Christians who just throw the label of Satanism on anything they dislike. Satanism is not merely a pejorative. It may have been a pejorative centuries ago. It may have been an insult term like heretic or heathen that you would just call other people. But we're not living in those times anymore. Satanism is a religion, and it's a well-established one. By the way, even if by some chance you were able to dig up some long-lost book written in, I don't know, like the 1500s, with a completely thought-out religion calling itself Satanism, even if you were to do that, it still wouldn't change history. If the book didn't go anywhere, didn't influence anybody, and you can't trace Anton LaVey's influences somehow back to this book with a string of self-identifying Satanists in between, then how on earth would finding that book discredit what Anton LaVey established? It doesn't. It kind of reminds me of these music trivia nerds who like to point to one song that Ike Turner recorded in 1951 that happened to have distorted guitar on it. And then from that, they try to argue that this was the actual birth of heavy metal, this song in 1951. No. You're just taking one aspect of heavy metal after the fact, ignoring all the other musical aspects of it, ignoring the whole subculture surrounding it, all the bands whom actual heavy metal bands cite as their influences and so on. And you're just picking this one thing. It's like trivia. Did this song from 1951 from Mike Turner go anywhere in establishing a genre of heavy metal? No, it didn't. Not the most perfect analogy, but hopefully you get my point. So tying this back in with the article, I keep running into people to this day who claim Satanism existed before us. And when I press them for examples, every single example turns out to be one of the following three things. One, either some Christian use of the word Satanism or satanic as a pejorative against strange people, real or fictional. Or two, some strange, spooky practice that never called itself Satanism in the first place. Or three, I'm given some unrelated group of people who actually came along well after the Church of Satan, and despite not having the same belief system as us at all, took up the label of Satanist anyway. Again, words don't work like that, but apparently the emotional appeal of this label we took up for ourselves and established a religion under seems to override whatever little logic is in their brains. And that seems to more or less have been the case with this experiment carried out by Warlock William, described in his essay that I just read. He came looking for evidence to back up these claims about a religion called Satanism existing before LaVey, and he found none. Well, that's more than enough of a rant for now. I've said some of these same things before on Satansplain before, and if I have, well, there's probably a reason why I'm repeating it. But thank you. Thank you all for listening. Please consider supporting Warlock William Tell's work if you liked the essay. I'll leave links in the description. Until then, hail Satan.
You have been listening to Satansplain. For more information about the show, visit the official website at Satansplain.com. And for more information about Satanism itself, visit churchofsatan.com. This episode, copyright 2025, Magister Bill M.